and became the first Vietnamese American woman in elected office in the Commonwealth and the first Vietnamese American elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives. She is also the first Asian American on the board of directors of the Massachusetts Caucus of Women Legislators and the first Asian American woman to serve as vice chair of a committee. She currently serves as vice chair of the Labor and Workforce Development Committee and is a member of the House Committee on Human Resources and Employee Engagement, the Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use and Recovery, and the Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government. Representative Nguyen is a proud Tufts alumnus. During her time as a student, she enrolled in Building Bridges, Race, Class, Power, and Politics, a Tisch College course that was place-based in Boston's Chinatown. As a Building Bridges student, Representative Nguyen was placed at Greater Boston Legal Services. Through the program, she found strength and community, embraced Tisch's values and the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and learn the importance of speaking up and working to amplify voices of those who often go unheard. After law school, she returned to GBLS as a legal aid attorney, advocating for domestic violence survivors, workers, immigrants, seniors, veterans, and children. She engaged in legislative advocacy and worked with statewide coalitions, lawmakers, and lawmaking bodies to push for laws that address issues of racial and economic justice and protect the rights of the most vulnerable populations. Representative Nguyen will speak with us this afternoon about her experiences in politics, as well as the importance of representation and civic engagement. She will later be joined by Shirley Mark, Director of Community Partnership and Assistant Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Justice here at Tisch College. Representative Nguyen and Shirley first met when Shirley facilitated her Building Bridges class. Shirley has been at Tisch for nearly 2 decades, working tirelessly to create resources and opportunities to strengthen and build campus community partnerships between Tufts and our local communities in Boston, Medford, and Somerville. Following their conversation, we'll have questions from the audience. Thank you all for being with us, especially Representative Nguyen. Please join me in welcoming her.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much to Dean Cunningham and all the faculty and staff here for inviting me. It's truly a pleasure to be back on campus. And I was just telling them that I have never been in this room. I was in the RAM room, in the old RAM room very often when I was at school here, but it's wonderful to see how this program has developed and how we can continue that partnership with you all. I know that we have a lot of Tisch Summer Scholars with us, as well as other scholars joining our office, and I'm really thrilled to be here to be a part of this conversation to talk more about how my journey from the Hill to Beacon Hill and how my journey got me here in terms of my very winding road, if you will. I started out thinking I was going to be a doctor coming in on a pre-med program. And one thing that I often say to college students when I come back to campus, whether this campus or other campuses, is that it's okay to not know what you want. It's actually just as important to learn what you're good at as well as what you're not good at. And what I found out when I started at school here was I was not very good at science courses. A surprising thing to me because I did really well at bio and chemistry and everything else in high school, but anatomy and some of these other labs were just not my thing. And it was good that I found that out in my early years here at Tufts, which allowed me to explore other classes and other opportunities, which led me to Tisch College, which led me to Building Bridges program, and then eventually put me on the path to becoming an attorney first and then getting involved in politics. And so I hope that many of you who are tuning in today or here today are already somewhat interested in politics. And if you're not, to hopefully inspire you to become more actively engaged. And I'll let you know more about what has inspired me and what it's been like entering the world of politics since 2018, as well as lessons that I've learned along the way. And I hope to impress on you the importance of being part of the election process and how important it is for all people from all different walks of life to feel represented in government, to feel as though they are represented in our democracy, and how you should continue to build on that and be a part of that. And so thank you to Dean Cunningham for just giving a little bit of background about me, but I want to expand on that a little bit for you. My family came here to the United States when I was 5 years old as political refugees in the early 90s under the humanitarian operation, because my father served in the South Vietnam War along US soldiers. So when the war ended, the communists put him in a re-education camp for 8 years. And so after he got out the re-education camp, we were completely blacklisted and he couldn't find work, et cetera. And so we were very fortunate to be able to be a part of this program to come to the United States. And at that time, we had less than $100 to our name, and my parents didn't speak a word of English. As new immigrants, they worked very long hours, working 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet, to make sure that we're taken care of, that we have food on the table. But they worked these jobs with very little benefits, very little job security. And frankly, I'm not even sure if they were paid the correct amount, but that's what new immigrants face, right? And seeing all that they've done to give my sisters and me the opportunities that they never had really inspired me to take advantage of education. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I was very lucky to have the financial aid that was offered to me to attend Tufts and graduate from Tufts to then move on to law school, as was mentioned. But it took me a while to really focus on what I wanted to do as a first generation college attendee. My dad only went to college a little bit in Vietnam, but never in America. And so I almost missed the FAFSA application, for instance, because I didn't know I had to apply for that. There were just all these lessons that I had to navigate, frankly, on my own, because my parents were, like I said, working 2 to 3 jobs, not really speaking the language and not really understanding the process. And so I was very fortunate along the way, though. Couldn't have gotten here without my teachers, without counselors, without so many people who took an interest in me and invested in me, not only during my K-12 education, but then after coming here as well. Shirley, I met you very early on. Thank you so much for all the guidance, as well as Professor Wu, just so many of the professors and deans and others who guided me and who showed me that there were people who cared, and that really helped me to get to where I eventually ended up, which was going to law school and then graduating and getting this national award to essentially serve underserved people from the Vietnamese American community, because I am one of the few legal services attorney who speak Vietnamese at the time. And so in doing all of this work, I advocated, not only did I represent people in the courtroom in employment law cases, housing cases, domestic violence cases, but I also advocated for policies, some of which you might have heard about: paid family medical leave, earned income tax credit, fight for 15, things to help working families. Those are the bills that I worked on prior to getting into office. And so after getting into office, I continued that work. But I do want to talk about a little bit about how I even got into politics in the first place. If you had asked me 10 years ago whether I wanted to be an elected official, or even 5 years ago, my answer would have been no. I was very happy working as an attorney representing new immigrants, the survivors of domestic violence, et cetera. But at the time when I was advocating for these bills, I tried to get in touch with my own representative. And for 2 years, I wrote to the guy, I emailed him, I went to the State House to advocate for bills, not a single response. And that's very problematic in many ways. First of all, how can you fully represent the people if you're not listening to the people? And even if you disagree with the policies, and we know he's a far-right Tea Party Republican, so he didn't believe in these social programs, he didn't believe in investments in people, and he did oppose all of these things that I've been working on, but he didn't even give me that opportunity to present my case, to talk about why these policies are important. So that was very concerning to me. But the straw that broke the camel's back was when he proposed an amendment to the budget that would have allowed police officers to stop anyone who looks illegal, not is, looks. So essentially, he wanted to legalize racial profiling, which was completely unacceptable to me because as an immigrant, as a person of color, he essentially wants police officers to just stop me for no reason at all, other than that I may look different, right? And so that was why I decided to run against him. I ran on a platform of building an inclusive and welcoming community for all. And that was a risk because just to give you the demographics of my district, it's about 92% white. We have about, well, at the time it was like, 6 to 8% Asian American, mostly Chinese Americans and South Asians, and like 1% Black Americans, and less than that for the Latinx community. So it's a very white district. And so in working on this platform, we took a risk in just doubling down on our values. And I was very thankful that the community was receptive to that. We just didn't know coming in how it's going to play out, because this community has been represented by a very conservative legislator for 8 years prior to me taking him on in this race. And I'm so thrilled that the community embraces this platform, as well as so many other issues that you might care about, whether it's supporting working families, affordable housing, transportation, working on the environment to address the climate change issues that we're seeing. In fact, today I'm going in to vote at 1 o'clock on offshore wind, just to make sure that we're talking about alternative energy sources so that we're not completely reliant on fossil fuel. So many of these issues that are important to everyday people. And I was very thrilled that we not only were able to convince the people in my district to vote for me, but the process of building that campaign was very invigorating. We were able to bring in voices that were just never involved in politics at all. And that is exactly what democracy is about. It's making sure that you're inspiring people, you're influencing people to want to get involved, to want to have their voices heard, and working with them to make sure that their voices are being heard. And that was what my campaign focused on for a very long time, is to be very intentional about the communities that we reach out to, and not just talking to the super voters in all communities, those people who constantly vote every election, and you can count on them going out. But we wanted to build on that. We wanted people to feel as though government and elected officials are working for them. And so in the process of building that support and getting volunteers out, I was very intentional about talking to moms who were often busy with their kids, so they're not often involved. And I had moms having, with their pushing their kids in strollers, door knocking for me, or dropping off literature. That was very inspiring. I had very certain elderly folks who told me, well, Tram, I can't walk to help you door knock, but I can drive you. And I was like, yes, let's do this, because especially one town in Boxford, it's 2-acre zoning, so each house is very far apart, and we didn't want to drive it. They just found very creative ways to get involved. And students, my goodness, high school students, college students, they were just so engaged because they want so much to be a part of that change. And I was very thrilled that in 2018, I was the only candidate who was endorsed by both former President Obama as well as former Secretary Clinton. Well, the only in our entire Commonwealth, I'm not sure if the entire country, but I was just very excited that they saw the potential of this campaign, especially because I was taking on someone who was just such an antithesis to everything that I believe in, and what many of us believe in the community. And so in talking a little bit about the campaign and what that looks like, it's very intimidating. Like I said, I never thought about running for office prior to that moment when I made that decision. So it took a lot of putting things in place, putting all my ducks in a row, getting in touch with people, introducing myself to people, and making sure that people understand what I'm fighting for and what I represent. And a couple of things to note about that is that, number one, it is never too early to take a class on what a campaign looks like. There are many programs out there. I want to put a plug in for the Merge program, which trains women to run for office, but there are many other programs out there. It's good to know just what is expected of you. So you can kind of mentally prepare yourself for that, to just learn the nuts and bolts of what a campaign entails so that you can go in more prepared. And I was very lucky that I was able to do that program where I learned the necessity of fundraising, even practiced my stump speech to sell myself to people, and also coming up with messaging that could win over both donors and supporters and voters, right? And so this whole process is, it was very eye-opening for me to learn just how big a campaign operation could be, especially when I was taking on a very entrenched incumbent. And also understanding that, you know, there's some of the shortcomings that I needed to address. For instance, just how expensive campaigns can be. Not only is it in terms of the money that you had to raise to pay for home cards, to pay for mailers. Just to give you an example, each mailer that we sent out, I have about 45,000 constituents in my district. Each mailer is about $10,000. So if you want to mail out 6 or 7, that's $60,000, $70,000 right off the bat that you need to raise. And then on top of that, you have to pay for, your staff, campaign manager, your messaging person, your field people, etc. So all of this added up very quickly. So you had to spend a lot of time fundraising. But in addition to that, as someone who worked for a nonprofit, who actually, the nonprofit Greater Boston Legal Services, they get funding from the state. I couldn't actually work there while running because of a conflict. So I had to take 7 months off, unpaid, in order to door knock every day from morning to night. And so with all of that, it is, this is why we need to talk about election reform and what does it mean to help make sure that there's a pending bill now that we're prioritizing the Women's Caucus to allow campaign funds to cover childcare that would allow parents to run for office. That's why you don't see many parents running for office. We need to talk about election reform in terms of contributions. This is exactly why you have mostly wealthy people running for office. I have to say I was very privileged that I have, my fiance who was able to pay for the mortgage and other bills that we had during the 7 months I had to take off. That's not something most people can afford to do, right? And so what does that mean in terms of we're boxing out people already at the gate from even entering into this arena? And how can we work to address that issue to bring more people in? And also this brings me to another barrier, which is the perception of what a state representative or what an elected official looks like. Who do you see? Who do you normally see represented at the national level, at the federal level, at the state level, and just so many other levels of government? We're still underrepresented in terms of the number of women. And in terms of the number of people of color. For instance, in the Massachusetts House, we are currently, very sadly, we just made it over to 31%, and now we literally just lost 5 women. 2 good things, they're moving on to bigger, better jobs, but that means that we're down 5 more women, and I don't know we're gonna have 5 more women or more entering the legislature to bring up that percentage. And so what does that mean in terms of building a pipeline? What does that mean in terms of making sure that people even have that interest to run for office? And there's a statistic out there that says that women need to be asked 7 times before they would even consider running. And I say most women of color aren't even asked at all. I was one of the few lucky ones who was asked to run. And so we need to continue to be intentional about that and providing them the resources to get in. But going back to the image of what an elected official is, I remember door knocking one time. I was, it's a summer. I'm in a suit right now because I'm going to the State House right after this. But when I'm door knocking, I'm not dressed like this. I'm dressed like jeans and a nice shirt or blouse or slacks. But I went out to a door and they're like, "Are you selling Girl Scout cookies?" Mind you, I was like 31 at the time. I'm in my mid-30s now, and that was 4 years ago. But I was like, wait, what? I just assumed you sell Girl Scout cookies. And so, this is why I continue to talk about why representation matters, because I want people to understand that, it's not simply a buzzword. People need to see it to be it. And it was very heartwarming for me. Last month, I went to one of the local schools in my district to do a read-along, like they had the read-along week. And after I read to this 5th grade class, there were 2 young girls just kind of staying back, and I knew they wanted to talk to me. So I came up to them and introduced myself again and said, "Oh, did you have any questions for me?" And she was so cute. She's like, "I just wanted to let you know I'm Vietnamese too, and I've never seen someone who looks like me, who represents me." And that made it all just so worth it. Like, just, all the issues that I had to face with COVID the last 2 years, all the hard work that we had to put in to respond to constituents, all the opposition we sometimes had to face given the positions that we take, it made it really worth it for me, because again, it is about making sure that our government is representative of the people, and making sure that people see themselves in government, which is exactly what those 2 young ladies showed me, that, they had never seen someone literally who looks like them in a leadership position. And I was really glad to be that person for them. And hopefully one day they might consider running for office and I could vote for them. But this is exactly why we continue to encourage young folks like yourselves too, to get involved. You are of voting age, but when I talk to even young kids who are not of voting age, it's so important to just stay engaged, to stay informed, and to not think about politics as this, intimidating thing, because you can start very small. You don't have to start by running for office. You can start by volunteering for a campaign, for instance. Looking for people who share your values and trying to get involved that way by, being an intern, by doing some research. Or if you're not interested in a candidate, if you're interested in an issue, that is still a campaign, because as you know, there are just so many different organizations out there pushing for different policies, whether you're interested in gun reform, the environment, making sure that we increase voter access, or working on healthcare, affordable housing, whatever it may be, there is something out there for you. And also to remember, I know I had this conception as well, that the misconception actually, oh, well, I need to be a political science major to be any help to a campaign. Absolutely not. You can be of so many different backgrounds, so many different educational background, and you can bring so many different skill sets to a campaign. For instance, if you're good at communications, or an English major, come on to my campaign. I need help responding to, a lot of the messaging, the controversies that are out there. Because to be frank, I don't think I can think of any one bill where everyone 100% agrees with me. That's just not possible. There's always going to be, opposition, support across the spectrum. And so we always want to work with people to be as responsive as possible to the people who may reach out either in support or in opposition. If you're good at graphics, we need help with graphics. So my point is that you can plug in so many different ways. If you like to talk to people, come on and knock on doors with me. Go on making phone calls for me. There are just so many ways that we could use your skill set. And also, it's not just about the election process too. There are other appointments as well. You can get appointed to commissions. You can get appointed to task force. Actually, in fact, there are many youth councils now for different issues, and they want young voices to be at the table to raise concerns that you may have about any particular issue. And if anyone's interested in that, please get in touch with me. And so my other advice to folks is that it's never too young to run for office either, because I actually do have a colleague who ran for city council at 23 and then got elected to the legislature at 25. Not too far from where you guys are at, I know that. And so I'm not saying you have to jump out there and run. Like I said, volunteer first. That's what I did. Before I ran for office, I knew some of that, of what was required of me, because I volunteered on some of my friends who were running for other seats. Like, I have a very close friend who was running for city council at the time, Lydia Edwards, and then now she just ran for Senate. I helped her out as well, but she was one of the first campaigns that I helped out on. And I remember just writing postcards in Vietnamese for her, because she had Vietnamese constituents, and she was like, you speak the language, do that. And so I just spent hours and hours writing postcards in Vietnamese for her. That's a skill set that I was able to bring to the table. And so all of this is to say that we all have something to contribute. We all have a story to tell. And I think it's so important for us to work together to make sure that all of those stories your viewpoints and feedback is taken into account, and that we're working with you to intentionally, get that information to make sure that our policies are reflective of the people, inclusive of the people, and it's just more well-rounded, to be honest. And so I am going to, I think I want to stop there to give us a chance to have a Q&A, but I just want to leave you a note that when you're engaged, and we all know that it's important to be engaged in the political process. When you do that, it benefits us all. And so I'm just really thrilled that Tisch College has invited me to be here today with you to have this conversation, to encourage you to be more involved, and to just make sure that I'm representing, as a jumbo, and making sure that we welcome your input and that we want to hear from you. So definitely please be in touch with me, stay in touch with me, and I just love coming back to campus, and I'm just so thrilled that we can make this happen today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tram, for sharing your story. I've heard you speak many times, and each time I am inspired and I learn something about your life's trajectory. And it's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to start off with a few questions, and then we're going to open it up to questions in the room, as well as people who have signed on virtually. I think everyone can see that you bring so much energy to the table. Everyone knows that it's been a very hard time. We're dealing with a global pandemic. We're dealing with deep racism, issues around global warming and climate change. And this week, of course, the invasion of the Ukraine and the war that's happening there. It's very, very heavy times. My question to you is, on days and weeks like this, how do you keep yourself motivated and stay positive? Do you have tips for us?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. And I am the first to admit that I do need, I need to work on my self-care skills. So let's just put it lightly. I feel like we all need to be very intentional about that, to really put our mental health first and our physical health too. But what keeps me going on? First of all, I'm very excited to be back here or to be in person with you all. So as you can see, this energy is like, oh my gosh, I get to see people in person. This is amazing. It's actually, I know you mentioned this is the first event here at Tisch College, but this is actually one of the few first events that I've been to in a while. And that keeps me motivated to know that we're doing good work, and that all these issues that you mentioned, it's daunting, but it keeps me motivated, because it's so important to work on these issues. If we don't do it, who will? And that's what I continue to ask myself every day. And what's the alternative? If I'm not in this position, I just keep reminding myself of who was here in this very spot just 4 years ago. And I actually was just reminding folks very recently, about 2-3 weeks ago, we were able to vote on the driver's license bill to essentially allow anyone, regardless of their immigration status, to get a driver's license here in Massachusetts, which is a great win. We got it through the House, and now it's going to the Senate, but we're hopeful that will make it through the finish line. But just look at that contrast. This seat was held by someone who wanted police officers to stop anyone who looks illegal, to having a representative here. Again, I have to say, this is me supporting my colleagues' work, but I was very proud to support that work. I was very proud to vote for that, to make sure that people have the means to get to work and otherwise without that fear. But this is exactly what motivates me to keep going every single day. We have so much to do, and as you've seen with the last 2 years of the pandemic, it just shows how important it is to have a responsive representative, because we were able to help hundreds of people with unemployment issues, with housing issues, with getting access to benefits. And my team worked around the clock to make sure that we respond to every person who reaches out with any questions regarding, the changes. If you remember the first year, where how to get vaccines, how to make sure that then eventually how to get tested. So all of these things are very important things to people, even though if you look in the bigger scheme of things, they're like minor issues. at some point, but they're very big for many of these people who are dealing with these problems. And so my team, we're just we're very much on the ground, and we want to know people to know that we are there for them. And even if we can't help them with a particular problem, that we are able to direct them in the right direction to get the resources that they need. But there's still so much to do. As you mentioned, fighting racism is what keeps me motivated. We've all seen the increase in anti-Asian hate that started with the beginning of the pandemic, with all the misinformation that basically put a target on the backs of people of AAPI descent. And I've been working with the AG's office, as well as a senator's office on a hate crimes bill to make sure that we're holding perpetrators accountable and making sure that we're not, that we are empowering communities to step forward to actually report these crimes and work to address them. But also the issue of climate change. What does that mean for us to continue to work together to leave this planet for future generations? And also, in terms of looking at the issue in the Ukraine too, that also inspires me. They are facing overwhelming odds, and they're not giving up. And so, when you see Ukrainians standing up to Russian soldiers and fighting for such important issues over there, who am I to step back and not face all the challenges that we see here in our state? And so just seeing all of that really inspires me to keep going and to continue to work with my colleagues to create a Commonwealth that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Tram. My next question is bringing you back to when you were a student here at Tufts. Reflecting back, what advice or guidance would you give to students today? Were there things that you did that you felt were really pivotal for your development, or were there things that you wished you had done?
Absolutely, great question. And I have been thinking about this a lot. I have to say, like, my time at Tisch was just so pivotal to my development. I think I found my voice here at Tufts, but I especially found my voice at Tisch College because I was able to work in community organizations, especially with Greater Boston Legal Services, to actually gain the practical skills and actually see how policies impact real life people. And that was just so invaluable to me because that led me, like I said, I went through many different majors before I finally decided on American Studies, sociology with a minor in psychology. But in finding that path, all the internships really helped shape who I am. And you all definitely need to put an emphasis on that. And I don't think that I knew that in my first 2 years here at college until my junior year, when I really found the value of internships and conversations. I actually wish I had more conversations with professors. Again, as a college student who really didn't know what she was doing, I really wish I knew that professors were very open to having these conversations with you. And I didn't find that until I took Professor Wu's class, and she was there to remind me that I need to talk to her all the time, which then led me to realize, oh, professors do want to hear from you. They do want to meet with you. They do want to help you. And so I wish I'd done more of that. But for advice for you all is really be kind to yourself. Don't think that you have to have everything figured out, because I can tell you that I did not have everything figured out pretty much up until I graduated, but I was able to rely on community to help me get there and to also ask for help, because I remember when I was switching majors, and my dad, his whole life, because he had to drop out of college to be in the military because of the Vietnam War, he'd always wanted to be a doctor, right? So he told me, "You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a doctor." So I wanted to go to Tufts on to be a doctor, and it was the hardest conversation to actually let him know, I'm actually not going to be a doctor. I'm going to go in a completely different route. And I actually went into a depression for a long time and almost wanted to drop out of school. And that was a very difficult point in my life. And I didn't ask for help, and I really wish I had. But thankfully, I had a really strong support network around me, and people helped without me asking. And so, and especially now with COVID and the isolation, it's just, even more important for all of us to speak out and to kind of be there for each other and to normalize that, mental health and getting help for mental health and all of that.
Thank you so much, Tram.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The last question before I open it up to the audience is, you've given us a lot of advice already, and you know that our democracy is in trouble. Everyone knows that, it's been for a while. If you could share with us, if you could tell us one thing, one action that we could do to contribute to healing our democracy, what would that be?
Oh, great question. Well, I already said vote, so definitely do that. But I also think conversation is so important because I feel like with social media and just how easy it is to be a keyboard warrior online, that conversations are very difficult at times, but these difficult conversations need to happen. And so I feel like the more we talk to each other, the more we can find common ground and bridge that divide. And that's exactly what I've learned, because as someone who represents a purple district, meaning that, my district, we have a lot of different opinions across the spectrum, the political spectrum. And I also have to work with both Democratic colleagues and Republican colleagues because I share districts with a whole mix of them. The conversations are what's really helpful is to allow me to see, okay, this is what you oppose, but can we find something that we can agree on? And being able to have those conversations has been very helpful to find common ground, common goals, and to work at those common goals and to move things forward. And so that's what I encourage you all to do.
That is great advice. And with that, I'd like to open it up to the audience. To questions in this room and or virtually. Do we have some?
Yeah, we have a couple questions that I'm going to read aloud for the folks in the Zoom room who submitted them. And folks in the Zoom room, just send us a chat message if you're having trouble hearing me or anyone else. So this question is from Sophia. She says, hi, my name is Sophia and I'm a senior interested in pursuing public policy and campaigns. I previously worked for Andrea Campbell's campaign for mayor. From one woman of color to another, I'm wondering if you have any advice for women of color, such as her, who are passionate about and interested in pursuing politics, but who feel disheartened about the potential for success for liberal women of color in male and male-dominated political spaces.
I hear you, Sophia. I really do. Because as one of few women of color, to be fair, when I came in, I was one of 2 AAPI women that came in that year. And at that point, we had 4 other women of color coming in, and now actually we're losing some of them to other races and other jobs. And so that number, we need to be, it's dwindling, and we need to continue to build on that. And unfortunately, I don't have any insights on, what we could do to address the male-dominated world other than get more of us elected so that we can become more than just, numbers that you can count on one hand. We need to make it, we need to normalize it so that people can see us as part of as part of government, a part of the institution, and that we're no longer the anomaly. And I would advise you to get in touch with us, because what I found to be really helpful when I first started running was to reach out to other women of color who have run. They might have won, they might have lost, but they have the experience of running or being in these spaces to get advice from them. And I'm more than happy to be a resource to chat with Sophia if you want to get in touch, because it is, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not easy. But it can be done, and it can be done with a lot of support around you. And so that's what I continue to lean on. Even to this day, we have a network where we literally call each other up in tears at times, because, if things get overwhelming, we call each other up to get advice. We call each other up just to listen. And so that is there, and that hopefully will continue to exist. And we do hope more of you will get involved so that we can build on that network.
Thank you on behalf of Sophia. So this is another question in the chat, which is related to Sophia's question. It's from Raki. I'm a Tufts alumna, class of 2000, living on Long Island and working in politics. Anytime a woman of color is on the verge of a powerful leadership position, the powers that be ensure these women of color are taken down, go away. I'm torn between staying in the political arena and just quitting from all the PTSD and trauma. Any suggestions?
Wow. Yes, again, I hear you, and I understand just how women of color are more scrutinized than others. Again, I don't have any, I'm still learning that myself and how to deal with that, and would love to have a further conversation with you, but I think that we just need to continue to remind each other that it is hard, but if our voices are missing, then that's even worse. And so we need to continue to amplify each other's voices. And also one of the other things is how they continue to put us down in some ways is that people tend to take credit for what we do. And so what I've been able to do in terms of working with my, other women of color in politics, or my sisters in service, as I call them, is to continue to retweet each other, share each other's messaging to make sure that we get credit where it's due, and to continue to build on getting allies as well. It shouldn't be incumbent upon us as women of color or people of color to fix this problem. We need others to be in this fight with us to help us amplify our white allies, if you will, white men in office who have been supportive of this. We need to continue to work with them so that they too can amplify our messages and our policies and push for us to get into leadership positions.
She says, thank you so much.
I wanted to give people in this room a chance to ask Tram a question.
Hi, I'm Arnav. I'm a sophomore here studying civic studies and econ. So you were talking a little bit about how your district is very predominantly white. I was wondering if you could talk about how that's been a challenge maybe in some ways, or maybe an opportunity for you to, do you feel there's been like difficulties because you don't necessarily match the makeup of your district always? Just curious about that a little bit.
Great question. And I think that I see this more of an opportunity than anything. So I'm the first person of color to ever represent this district. And so they haven't seen anyone like me in office. And I have been very proactive in terms of reaching out to introduce myself to people, being very present at all different events, and also meeting people where they're at. So we don't just sit back and wait for people to reach out to us. We have town halls, we have office hours, we go into the community. There were times before COVID when I just sat in a cafe in the district and said, stop by and say hi whenever you want, just to make sure that people know I'm approachable, that they can come to me with their issues. And frankly, the silver lining of the pandemic was that it allowed us to be very helpful to people in the community. So it didn't matter to them that I didn't look like them. They wanted me to help them with their unemployment issues, with all these issues that they have and that they came to me to seek assistance with. And so we've been able to be responsive in that way. And so, and also been able to showcase my culture to the people in the district and introduce them to things that they otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to. For instance, I love cooking, so I actually have had events where I've cooked in front of people and people could tune in and we talk politics as I'm cooking. Spring rolls, that's something very new that no one has really ever seen before. And so we've been able to kind of find that balance of meeting people where they are, but also introducing some of me and my culture.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Ty. I'm a sophomore here at Tufts. Last semester, I took a great course in Tisch College on independent political organizations. So sort of inspired by that, I was wondering, what was your relationship with outside independent political organizations, advocacy groups during the election process? And has that changed now that you're in a position of governing legislative power?
Oh, great question. Advocacy groups are so crucial. And so I was an advocate outside the building working on those bills that I mentioned to you. So I've been very plugged in with advocacy groups because I was with them before I came into office, and now I continue to work with them. And to be frank, we would not be as successful with our with the bills that we've been able to pass without these advocacy groups lending their expertise. So for instance, I was able to pass a bill last year, this session, the last year, to allow victims of trafficking and violent crimes to be able to get their certification so they can start applying for their UNT visas. And I relied on immigration attorneys, people I worked with. I did some immigration law as well, but these advocacy groups were the people who helped draft that legislation, continue to advocate for that legislation, and it eventually passed. Same thing with so many of the other bills. Just to give you a picture of like the number of bills we have to deal with, 6,000 to 8,000 bills get filed each session. I don't think people realize that. And so I am the first to admit I'm not an expert in many of these bills. And so we rely on these groups to give us insights, to answer questions, to help us with the really deep dives that we need. Of course, I have my interns to do, you know, preliminary research, but when I have that particular question, I turn to these advocacy groups to give us their expertise on that. And so it's an ongoing relationship, and certainly we all have very different relationships with different advocacy groups. And so depending on, you know, your priorities, you're closer to some advocacy groups than others, but it's wonderful to know that they are there and available to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have any questions online, Jess?
Not at the moment. I have a question about wanting to be in touch with you from someone, but we can chat about that.
Yeah, for
after.
sure. And no, I'm happy to share, if you can share my contact information with them. then
Okay,
yeah,
sure.
that's actually absolutely fine with us.
Any other questions here?
I have one.
Oh, you have one, please,
Sorry.
Jess, yeah.
So in addition to events like this one, which thank you for doing, Tisch College has a program, a winter term, week-long program for undergrads called Tufts Campaign School,
Oh, wow.
which is sort of like a workshop-y type intensive program to just teach students who are interested in campaigns but maybe don't have experience of what that's like at all different levels. So, and we're constantly sort of changing up the content, but I'd be interested to hear from someone who has campaigned and who has worked on other campaigns. What areas or skill sets do you feel like are most valuable when you're looking at, you know, young people helping you on your campaign, or what you learned as a campaign staffer?
So for us to, whether it's bringing on an intern for the State House side or the campaign side, my number one focus is on looking for someone with passion and also someone with shared values. So make that very clear. We actually don't even look at you know, emails that where they're like, I just want to work for you, and they don't tell me why, because our office, as I mentioned, many of the issues that we work on are very nuanced, and we want people who understand what I stand for and will stand with me on these issues, because we will be taking on very hard issues where we have a lot of opposition. And for any interns in our office, we want them to know that going in, that this is not going to be easy, and I want you to stick with me. And also writing skills. It's always so helpful, and that's with, you know, because we need you to write memos for us. Well, actually, my fellow wrote the talking points for today, but these are the tasks that we ask, you know, it's interns to help draft speeches and other, even social media posts. So we need strong writing skills and strong people skills, because whether you're an intern for the campaign or at the State House, you're going to be interacting with other people, whether it's, you know, people, other colleagues in the State House, other interns, or, you know, with my constituents. And so we want folks who are eager, who want to be helpful to people, and who understand what we stand for as an office.
Thank you. I do have another question from a virtual attendee, but I don't want to shut anyone down. Okay. So this question's from Linda, and it's political, so just give you a heads up. I'm a Tufts alum, class of 1986. Who are you supporting for the upcoming governor election?
More healing. 100%. That's an easy. I thought you were going to ask some other office, but this is the only endorsement that I've done so far for statewide races. And I have to say, like I mentioned earlier, we've been working on a hate crimes bill together. But even before that, when I was an attorney doing employment law work, we worked very closely with the labor and work their labor division on a lot of wage theft and workers' rights issues. And so I am fully on the Healy train.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, this will be the last question.
You talked a little bit about, you know, using social media a lot. I was wondering if you could maybe reflect on how, as a representative, how that's like both a good and a bad thing maybe. Like, I feel like social media has such a pervasive influence on how we see politics today, so I'm curious on your perspective with it in general.
Absolutely. Would love to talk about the drawbacks of social media. Part of my mental health stage was very much influenced by that, especially, when I first started running for office. And I have to say, it's a great tool because that's how we can get general information out there and really blast it out there to see, if it could be helpful to anyone. We use that very often to make announcements on bills that are going through, bills, our successes, or even to raise awareness about what's coming down the pipeline. We also use it to, like I said, to be proactive, to address certain issues that we know, if I'm hearing from like 5 constituents who have this one issue, I would make a post and make sure that others who may have the same issue know what's going on. But the drawback of that is, like I said, the keyboard warriors, the people who, because they're not face to face, they would say things on social media that they would hopefully not say to my face. And that was a problem for me. And I have to say was, because I have now worked with my team where I don't go down the rabbit hole as much as I used to. And so I've been able to preserve my sanity that way. And that I usually go on to post and I kind of do a little skim of what's going on, especially just to know about current events, but I don't do deep dives into the comments. Stay away from the comments. That's my advice to you. Do not go into the comments and you should be okay. Go.
Rep. Nguyen, we're so happy that you came back. We know you are so busy. I do follow you on social media, as you know, and she is out there all the time or on virtual events constantly. And we know that you're doing an amazing job. And, we support you, of course. We have a few small goodies for you, jumbo goodies.
Oh, thank you.
So welcome you back, and we hope you'll come back again.
So glad to be here, and definitely let me know we could be back, and very interested in the political program. And I know I've been talking to Dean Cunningham about other opportunities, but glad and happy to help in any way.
Thank you.